Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Intercultural Communication Conversation class for week 13. Things are on the downslope, downhill. It's all downhill from here. Week 13, we're going to talk about accents. So it's a bit of, we're talking about different regional accents and national accents, different ways of speaking English, and exposing you to many different ways. And I want you to pay attention to how the speakers place their stress and how they pronounce different sounds. Also, tone and intonation are quite important. If you've taken or are taking right now EP1, the Teaching English Pronunciation course, that will be quite helpful in helping understand that. Or if you haven't taken that class yet, this will make a lot more sense later. Now, about the voting that you had with your, choosing whether to do another project or a test, the majority, by about 55% to 45%, chose a test. And so for week 15, I'll prepare an online on eClass examination for you to work with and to take on week 15. So next week, week 14, we'll finish our material, and I will go over in detail what will be on the test and what you should look out for, what you should study, what do you need to actually pay attention to. That's all important stuff. Again, it will be open note, open book test, so the material will be available to you. So that should be quite nice. Now, this week we're going in about accents and different ways of speaking English. And one overall theme of this is that there's no one absolute correct way of saying English, of pronouncing English. And today you're going to be exposed to many different correct Englishes. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk a bit about accents and different ways of pronouncing things based on regional identity or, age or demographic, different things. So accents are everywhere. They do exist. Everyone has an accent of some kind. There's no one regular, normal, or even proper way of speaking English. And every language has accents of some kind. There's a difference between people who are from Busan and people who are from Seoul. Regional accents, they exist. But something that's important to keep in mind, especially as we get more and more mass media, regional accents are disappearing. They're becoming homogenized. The Busan accent is getting less and less common. The Gangwon accent is becoming less and less common. The Jeju accent or dialect, because of its different vocabulary and grammar even, is becoming less common as well. But, that is what it is. But with English accents, I want to introduce you this week to different English accents and how people use them and what they sound like. Some people have very pronounced, very identifiable accents, and other people have worked or trained and studied to flatten their accents because it might work for jobs or just because of social pressure, things like this. So I have found lots of different kinds of examples of different accents, and most of them are from real people, politicians or interviews on the street or what have you. Only one example is from a movie, but it's a good example. The actors are speaking in their real accent, their native accent. So it should be hopefully interesting for us. Now, one identifier of accents, of regional accents, is vocabulary choice. So on the screen, there are lots of these cans of a drink, of a kind of drink. In America, different places use different words for these kinds of drinks. Some people call it soda, or soda pop, or pop, or Coke. They use all those words to describe all of these things in cans. Now you might notice that there's no actual Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola here, but some people call all kinds of soda Coke. So it's a regional difference. But with that, let's get started here and hear a Boston accent. Boston is a city in the northeastern part of the United States, and they have a very distinct accent, especially with their AR sounds. We hear it with car and park, and hear how this city politician, how he talks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly agree with both of my colleagues. And it's not just Cummings Park, it's Car Park, it's Plaisted Park, it's throughout the community. I think at this point, too, I'd like to send an official resolve to the DPW to do not only the cleanup at all these parks, but do a preventative maintenance plan on the top lots as well. They're starting with the nice weather. It's starting to get crowded down there, and I checked with the DPW Parks Department, and they'll only more or less respond to complaints of items that may happen. Maybe missing a piece of equipment or something of that nature. I think in the interest of public safety for the children and the families of our community, we should have them in on a Saturday maybe and go through every park in the community and just check them all for safety, as well as start doing the cleanups with the graffiti removal, as well as I know they're getting the baseball fields ready for the upcoming season, but these tot lots are certainly a priority. I know Barry Park has some issues with the tot lot that has to be addressed that was brought to their attention, but a citywide systematic approach, and let's be proactive so that someone doesn't get injured at one of our parks.
Yeah, you heard it there because he's talking, he's a city politician and he's talking about the parks, the city parks. So he's saying the word park a lot. Notice how he said it. He didn't say park. He said park, park, park. It's very how Boston people say the AR sound. They say car, the car park. That's how they talk. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, they're both from Boston, and when they speak naturally, that's how they talk. So if there's an AR sound, it's not R but ah, almost it's not AR but almost AH, ka, park, and it has a higher thing. So let's listen a little bit again, and you can hear it again.
And it's not just Cummings Park, it's Car Park, it's Plaisted Park, it's throughout the community.
So it's not just Simon Park. So he's talking again. It's how he talks. That's his accent.
I think at this point, too, I'd like to send an official resolve to the DPW to do not only the cleanup at all these parks, but do a preventative maintenance plan on the top lots as well. They're starting with the nice weather.
So he said, a maintenance preventive plan on the parking lots, so parking lots. But how he says it is parking lots. And that's how he talks. That's the key identifier of the Boston accent. Is that how they say AR, car and park, or Farsi, be car, park, Farsi. That's how they say it. It's very identifiable. And so, like with actors, Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, I know Marky Mark as well. Not Marky Mark. That's when he was a pop star. Mark Wahlberg. That's his real name. Mark Wahlberg is also from Boston, and when he speaks naturally, not in a movie, that's how he talks. If you saw The Departed, that takes place in Boston, and so many of those actors just use their regular, normal accents for it, so it works out. This here, this is the general New York City accent, and this is an old, video from decades ago. But looking at this man, this is, lack of a better term, this white ajashi, this is a New Yorker. New Yorkers are like that. They enjoy pizza and hot dogs. And in this, to set the stage, in this film, this is a discussion and an argument, a debate between the city government and the city workers' unions, the representatives of the workers' unions for garbage and driving and things like that. So they're sitting and having a meeting, and they're yelling at each other in constructive manners. Let's hear and how they sound.
Any equipment in the park department, whether it be in forestry, in shops, or out in the field, The trucks belong to the motor vehicle operators. That's their title in the city of New York, to drive all equipment for the city of New York. You have a man getting $13,000 driving a vehicle which is out of title, and a man is sitting down $7,000. That's all he gets for a starting salary. A motor vehicle operator. Why doesn't the city put a motor vehicle operator on that truck for $7,000 rather than have a man that's a qualified tree surgeon, $13,000, riding behind a wheel of a truck, driving a truck? What is he doing that for, Mr. Lord?
You heard it there. Yeah. One, New Yorkers are famously aggressive in how they talk. A bit how, if you go to Busan, people speak there more aggressively, a bit more yelly and shouty in how people talk. And not that they're going to fight, it's just that's how they talk. And so it helps if you talk like that too. But you hear how he said New York. And he spoke quite quickly. So let's go back and try to listen again how he says the city's name, New York.
Out of title, and a man is sitting down $7,000. That's all he gets for a starting salary. A motor vehicle operator. Why doesn't the city put a motor vehicle operator on that truck?
We have to go. Uh-oh. Hold on. Gosh darn.
Wasn't it your...
No, what I'm saying...
Hold it.
No, wait a minute. It is...
Any equipment in the park department, whether it be in forestry, in shops, or out in the field, the trucks belong to the motor vehicle operators. That's their title in the city of New York.
There he said, the city of New York. New York. You hear it, not New York. New York. It's much harsher, and how they bring them together. New York becomes New York. The W and the Y come together. New York. And that's how they talk. And you still hear this accent in some places, but a lot of people have moved into New York City, and the accent has become a bit lost. This is not the... how should I say? How this gentleman is talking. Well, he's an ajashi, for all lack of better terms. That's how he's talking. He's not cool, sophisticated. He didn't go to university. He might not have graduated high school at that time. It was okay to not go to high school, to not finish high school, just start working. So he talks a bit uneducated. If you've heard President Donald Trump talk, he uses some of this style. He's from New York City. He went to very fancy schools, but he still talks like that. So you hear how he pronounces some words and the aggressive nature that he talks. That's how New York City men would talk. That's just how it is. So we go ahead a little bit.
Now let's get that straight. Every negotiation...
What do we have motor vehicle operators hired for? What do we have motor vehicle operators hired for? Do we hire forestry men to drive trucks, or do we have motor vehicle operators?
Service.
We have motor vehicle... That's your interpretation of a crew service. I'll take and show you a truck down there that's 20,000 pounds. That's a motor vehicle operator. It's a responsibility to drive through a city street.
It is
and you
not.
have to have a professional man behind that wheel.
You're not a professional. Let's get something straight. Listen to me.
Who's not a professional?
You're not a professional.
I'm a professional driver. For the city of New York, I had to take an examination, and I had to
You are a civil servant who took an exam.
Now, Tom Lurie, you notice for a fact, I brought this out before the Department of Personnel 3 years ago when I went to a meeting, and she told me that she was going to look into this and have things taken care of. Not a thing was done. Go around the city of New York and see what's being done in the park department.
So yeah, they're talking about wage money. So you can hear how they talk, and they're very angry about it. They're insulting each other. Because one guy's just a truck driver, but he's proud of being a truck driver. He's a professional. He took an examination and everything. But you can hear how New York City men used to talk. And it's different from how the Boston man talks. Even though the cities are pretty close together, they do have different accents, identifiable accents. So this is a more modern example, and this is actually from January 6th, that evening. So this is Senator Lindsey Graham, and he has a kind of softer Southern American accent. When I say Southern America, I mean the south of the United States. But you can hear how he talks, and it is identifiably different than how the Boston man talked and how the New York City man talks.
Tim Scott, 1876. South Carolina, Louisiana, and Florida sent 2 slate of electors. They had 2 governments, by the way, and we didn't know what to do. Why did South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana do it? To hold the country hostage to end Reconstruction. It worked. The commission was 8-7. It didn't work. Nobody accepted it. The way it ended is when Hayes did a deal with these 3 states. You give me the electors, I'll kick the Union Army out. The rest is history. It led to Jim Crow. If you're looking for historical guidance, this is not the one to pick. If you're looking for a way to convince people there was no fraud, having a commission chosen by Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and John Roberts is not going to get you to where you want to go. It ain't going to work.
So you can hear how he talks. Of course, we don't need to listen to the entire speech, but he's talking. He's from the South, and you can hear his vocabulary choice. The use of ain't, A-I-N''T, ain't. It ain't gonna work. That is something that we see a lot more in the South of the United States. It's a replacement word for it ain't gonna work. It isn't going to work. But ain't is a lot easier to say than isn't. It isn't going to work. It ain't going to work. It's much simpler. It's much easier to say. And Southerners have a reputation of being uneducated, of being stupider than their northern neighbors, people from New York or Boston, for example. So, that's how he talks. And he says, it ain't going to work. He's speaking a bit more casually, but he has given a speech, and you can hear in his pronunciation, and he stretches out vowels more than we heard with the New York man or the Boston man.
So it's not going to do any good. It's going to delay, and it gives credibility to a dark chapter of our history. That's why I'm not with you. But I will fight to my death for you. You're able to object. You're not doing anything wrong. Other people have objected. I just think it's a uniquely bad idea to delay this election. Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president.
So he's talking. So you can hear the difference. He has a softer, lighter Southern accent. And so yeah, he has that. You might notice that his name is Lindsay. Lindsay is usually a woman's name, but sometimes, like the name Ashley can also be for men, for males. All right.
Tim Scott.
1870. Gosh, there we go. Now, let's go out of North America and go into Great Britain. This is Scotland, and this is from a movie, but it's from Trainspotting, and they are in Scotland, and they're gonna drink and yell at each other. There is a lot of bad words in this, but it's how young men often speak. So you're all grown-ups now, so you can hear the naughty words.
Well, what are you waiting for?
Tommy, this is not natural, man.
It's a great outdoors. It's fresh air.
Look, Tommy, we know you're getting a hard time off Lizzie, but there's really no need to take it out on us.
Doesn't it make you proud to be Scottish?
It's shite being Scottish! With the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth! The most wretched, miserable, servile, pathetic trash that was ever shot into civilization! Some people hate the English, I don't! They're just wankers! We, on the other hand, are colonised by wankers! Can't even find a decent culture to be colonised by! We're ruled by effete arseholes! It's a shite state of affairs to be in, Tommy, and all the fresh air in the world won't make any fucking difference!
So anyways, you can hear it sounds very, very different. And you can see here, even in the title of the video, it's shite being Scottish. That's how they pronounce the word shit. Spell it differently as well, but it's shite being Scottish, they say. But you can hear how their pronunciation, how their intonation is very different than what we're normally used to in seeing North American television on Netflix or YouTubers and things like that. Scotland doesn't have very many people compared to America or Canada, there's only around 4 million Scottish people, I believe. Not very many compared to, what was it? Well, 350 million Americans, 40 million Canadians. So, yeah, it's a smaller subgroup of English speakers. All right. Now, this is President of Nigeria. This is not he's giving a speech at the United Nations. And Nigeria and some of these other countries, we're moving away from what we call the inner circle of English for these. So we say inner circle of English, that's a phrase referring to Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Those are for lack of a better term, the white English-speaking countries. And then we have the middle circle, which we include countries that use English as an official language, and most of their people speak English. Nigeria is an example, and we'll meet some other examples like Malaysia and India. So we'll hear his pronunciation of English, and you can hear how very different it is from the Boston accent, from the New York accent, from the Southern accent, from the Scottish accent. These are all different pronunciations of accent of English, and they're all correct. They are all perfectly valid and correct. They're not wrong. They're just different.
I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and to invite him to address the Assembly. Mr. President.
Nigeria's clapping. That's nice.
Mr. President, Heads of State and Government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I wish to thank the General Assembly for the honor bestowed on the government and people of Nigeria by electing our national, His Excellency Tijani Muhammad Bande, to the presidency of the 74th session of this august body. This is indeed a great honor to our country. Nigerians are truly grateful and shall endeavor to live up to the expectations and the responsibilities thrust upon us. Ambassador Muhammad Bande is an experienced and seasoned diplomat, and I am confident that he will prove to the international community his suitability.
You can hear how he talks, and he's an older gentleman, and he's president of the country, so he's going to speak a bit more distinguished, gentler than if we were to find a young 25-year-old man on the street in Nigeria. They speak differently, similar to how you might expect Moon Jae-in to speak versus a 22-year-old man in Busan. Their intonation and tone is going to be different. But here we can hear how he pronounces words and how he reduces certain parts of words. So government and government becomes government, as in the reduction of the middle syllable. It comes into it. All right.
I have the honor to welcome.
Yeah, there we go. Now this is another African accent, but this is an example from South Africa, and this is quite interesting. I don't think you've learned about South African history very much. You might have learned the name of Nelson Mandela, but I don't know how much you know. But anyway, South Africa, it's one of the few African countries that has a significant minority of white population. They've been there for about 300, 400 years now. There are two kinds of whites in South Africa, generally speaking. They have the British whites, the English, and then there's Afrikaan. Afrikaan they are former Dutch speakers from the Netherlands. And so their accent of English is different. And so hearing it sounds different. It sounds when I first heard the South African Afrikaans English, it sounded very strange to me. More strange than Scottish or New Zealand or any other, like all the other native speaking accents in English. Afrikaans, South African English, everything, it sounded far more foreign, more alien, more different than the others. So it's quite interesting. Of course, this man is a former president, I believe, of South Africa. He's famous for being the last white president of South Africa. All right, let's skip ahead here. Let's get.
I'm in Rhodesia.
Well, he had a chance. At an earlier negotiation situation, there were proposals on the table in the case of the old Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. The British government was very directly involved in negotiations because it was not an independent country like South Africa. And offers were on the table. I think it was on a ship somewhere. I forgot the name of the ship, which would have put Ian Smith and the whites in the old Rhodesia in a much better position than the final deal he made. But he passed it up and he wanted too much. He wasn't prepared to make painful compromises and concessions. There were some people, there are still some whites today telling me, I gave away too much. As there were blacks until Mr. Mandela's death who said he made too many compromises. Those were the hardliners, and I think Ian Smith himself was a hardliner. He wanted too much. There are some whites who say, I could have negotiated a white veto in a new constitutional system. I never stood for a white veto, because that would be a form of continued racial discrimination in favor of a minority.
So we see here, yes. Again, I don't know how much you know about South Africa, but anyways, it was always officially democracy, but only white people could vote, and they made up a small percentage of the total population. And blacks were limited in their economic freedoms as well as their political freedoms. And so South Africa had, they had the system called apartheid, and this gentleman, de Klerk, he was the last white president of South Africa before the free election, the actual free elections that they had. So he's talking about negotiating the transition of a new constitution to allow blacks to actually be part of their own country, the black South Africans. So you can see how he says certain words, though. Words like put, P-U-T, put. He pronounced it quite differently, put. So instead of it's oo. And then how he talks. This is an example of an Afrikaans accent of English. Because one of the things about South African Afrikaans is that they speak Afrikaans at home, their own language, and they learn English as well. So, but it sounds quite interesting, and it's another accent of English that we do see from time to time. I'm quite possibly some of your English teachers that you had growing up in elementary school or middle school or wherever could have had this accent as well, and it could have sounded a bit funny. All right, this is a fun one. It's a fun video as well. Australian. This is a good old boy, Steve Irwin. He's on. He got very famous for being the crocodile hunter. He passed away some time ago, but he did animal shows, especially with crocodiles and alligators and snakes, and he was always so happy and positive about things. So this is him on a children's show with puppets and things, and he's talking about snakes, and you can see around him, his neck, he has a snake. But I want you to hear his accent of English. He speaks with what they call the broad Australian accent, as in not sophisticated, not educated. This is much more of what you might find as a farmer, someone living out in the countryside. But it's much more, if you asked an American, what is an Australian accent? This is an Australian accent.
The only reason I'm doing this is because this one's a python, and as you see, he won't bite because he can't eat me, and he doesn't feel scared. I don't scare him, so he won't bite, and he hasn't got venom. Now that's a python, but it's very difficult from a distance to tell a python from a. You might have to cut here. He's biting my neck. I'm serious.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, if I watch the telly, I should be able to. Can you get a close in on this?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at that.
Oh, he's gonna let go. Yep. Perfect.
Did that hurt?
No. Sorry about that.
All right, you hear, especially in his A's, how he talks. But yeah, the snake, he says the snake's not going to bite him. It's perfectly safe. And then the snake bites him. And I like the puppet looking scared. But anyways, let's listen again on how he pronounces his A's. Oh, gosh darn. Come on there. Let's hear.
The only reason I'm doing this is because this one's a python, and as you see, he won't bite because he can't eat me, and he doesn't feel scared.
He can't eat me, and he doesn't feel scared. He can't eat me. North Americans usually say can't, but Steve Irwin says can't. And then with the Australian pronunciation, he can't eat me, he's not scared. And that's how he pronounced it. But he says it much better than me.
He doesn't feel, I don't scare him, so he won't bite, and he hasn't got venom. Now that's a python, but it's very difficult from a distance to tell a python from a, you might have to cut here, he's biting my neck. I'm serious.
So, sorry, I just love the little puppet looking up at him. Anyways, so yes, this was for a children's television show, Sunshine TV, but you can hear, especially in how he pronounced can't and scared. He puts a lot of stress on the A there, a lot of intonation on there as well. If you've taken EP1, you've learned about intonation and stress. And with accents, you really hear it. Australian's accent versus the American accent. You hear a lot of different stress and intonation and tone. So this is a lot where the accents come out. And so, yeah, you can definitely hear. Steve Irwin was a great example of Australian accent. I don't try to make accents myself, but all right. We've got a lot of accents. This is Don Cherry. And he is a very good example of Canadian accent. Canadians have a reputation of being very nice and quiet and polite. And I think it is entirely unearned. I have met more rude Canadian men in my life than others. But Don Cherry is a perfect archetype, a perfect example of a Canadian hockey man. Ice hockey is the most popular sport in Canada. It's their national sport, and he's still alive. He is a commentator on things. So this is CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, story on Don Cherry. Let's hear, and you can hear his very Canadian accent versus the newscaster, more flattened Canadian accent. Oh my God! Why does it do that? Play. There we go.
I mean, can I say something about this guy? He's 6'3", 215 pounds, and he comes out and says there shouldn't be fighting in the game. Well, the guy don't
That's
fight.
The first thing Don Cherry can't stand. Namby-pambies who won't fight.
Well, you can provide muscle without taking penalties or fighting.
Oh, yeah, you can provide. Well, look, I'll tell you something.
His opinions reach 3 to 4 million people a week between periods on Hockey Night in Canada. But very few, watch below the belt here, get to jab back.
And I don't.
And then there's the thoughtful Cherry. Take women in the NHL.
Well, actually, women in the National Hockey League, I think it'd be great. I think every dressing room should have one.
Cherry on world affairs.
I am sick and tired of Canada kowtowing to the rest of the world. I heard a politician say, we have to be careful because the rest of the world loves us. No wonder they love us. We're weak. We're spineless wimps.
You don't go through life conducting Pier 4 brawls. Stay with us, Sports Weekend.
But what really bugs him?
I can't stand criticism. One bit.
Well, you're in the wrong business.
I know, but I can't stand criticism.
You gotta be kidding. You mean, I think half the things you say are a bunch of crap. And you're telling me you can't stand criticism?
I can't stand criticism, but what I do is
Somebody who dishes it out like you?
I take it where it comes from people like you. It doesn't bother me, left-wingers, see.
That's anyone who disagrees with Cherry, and there's the odd one around. But not tonight. He's back in a cubbyhole in Maple Leaf Gardens watching the game on TV and trying out the lines. He works all day on his diatribes, and it needs reassurance from co-anchor Ron McLean.
I say, what is this guy? Are you going to bring up him?
I don't know.
Oh, no, you don't know. You're not. Brian McClellan, 6'3", 215 pounds, doesn't like fighting. Can you imagine that?
So you can hear how he talks, especially his, again, with stress and tone. You can hear how these gentlemen talk, and these are Canadian accents. And how, again, it sounds, they go at a bit, even though they have low voices, they go at a bit higher pitch than you'll hear in other things. All right, so that's Canada. Let's keep moving. There's a lot of these, so I hope you're comfortable. Malay English. Malaysia was a colony of Great Britain, and Malaysia has, like Indonesia, the Malays, they a lot of different islands, and those islands have different peoples with different languages. So they use English as a lingua franca, as a common language for when it's needed, and that's so Malays and speak English pretty well. Let's skip ahead.
Responding to the
Asia gained independence. In 2016, though, you resigned from UMNO and you set up your own party, announcing that you would contest the next elections, which you eventually ended up winning, surprisingly. What is it that made you decide to run again for office at the age of 92?
So this is the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. He's running for office when he's 92 years old. But so he's an older man, but you can hear his intonation, and Malay English goes up and down, up and down, up and down a lot more than what we hear with Canadian or North American or British English. So try to listen for that.
Well, when I stepped down in 2003, I had no intention of being in politics still. But after I stepped down and the new leader takes over, a lot of people came to see me, asking me to do something because they were not satisfied with the leadership of my successors. Responding to the appeal, I tried to advise, but even with the fifth Prime Minister, I had to resign from the party.
From the party, you can see how he says that. There's a right up and down part of intonation, how he talks. How I talk, I would say, I would have to resign from the party, but resign from the party, it goes up and down. That's how the Malays, when they speak English, it's how most of them sound. So it's quite, well, it's different, and that's how, and you'll hear that as well. Now, Indian English, we're almost done. Stay strong. Indian English is also very interesting. Now, in EP1, you will have learned that English is a stress-timed language. So the amount of time that we take in saying things depends on stress. Korean, on the other hand, is a syllable-timed language, as in each syllable has about the same amount of time. Indian English is not stress-timed. It's syllable-timed. That's a big, big difference, and you can hear that when they talk. It comes out at a much more regular cadence in how they talk. And so this is an example of Indian English.
Hello, namaste, and welcome to Delhi. I'm Divina Gupta, and this is Work Life India on the BBC, the show that looks at all things to do with money, the work we do, and the lives we lead. Now, the world's second most populous country is faced with a severe water crisis. According to a government think tank, 21 of India's major cities are at the risk of running out of groundwater as soon as next year. Some experts contest that, but in places like the southern city of Chennai, the worst is already here. Residents there have to queue up to fill their pots from rationed government water services. Hospitals, schools, and hotels are struggling to cope. So we are asking, how can India tackle this water crisis? Hello, namaste, and...
That was pausing. All right. So yeah, you can hear how she talks. One, the cadence. Now, obviously, she's a BBC newscaster, so she has professional speaking training. But how she pronounces some words, instead of year, you hear it's a very much reduced Y. It's much quieter. Let's go ahead and hear some of these guests. These are less professional speakers.
In the recent past. But Chennai citizens and their reactions to Chennai's water crisis has been for over 20 months. So it's not that something we've suddenly woken up. The media is talking about it now, yes, no doubt. But Chennai citizens, yes, had
And
their
still
moment.
we saw this large crisis, Aditi, and Chennai is actually in a coastal area. It's next to India's largest natural beach.
Encroached almost everywhere in name of real estate, and that is what has actually intensified the problem, because those bodies...
So you can hear how the cadence is a little different from the other examples we've seen. And then it's a bit of a stereotype, but Indian English is a higher pitch than what we might find in other accents of English. The men speak in a higher pitch, the women speak in a higher pitch. It's just how they talk. Generally, it's not 100%, of course. There's always exceptions. You can always find it. But if you look up examples of Indians speaking English, they sound a certain way, and that's what I believe the Prime Minister of India, he mentioned he wanted to create a standard of English for India. So Indian General English, not based on British English. He wanted to codify Indian English. And so you can hear they talk a certain way. All right. Now, this is an example of AAVE. This is African American Vernacular English. And so African Americans, they speak the pronunciations different from other subgroups in America. And especially in the TH sound, the or they, it often is pronounced as a D sound, as in da, day. You'll hear that very often, and so it's something that is quite used.
There's a lot of money in Memphis, and there's a lot of poverty. You know, we have parts of South Memphis where whole streets and blocks are just vacant. It's like a war that people left due to some catastrophe, but it was just white flight and sprawl. And so what used to be a small family-owned grocery store is now a vacant building, and on one end of it they have a liquor store that's typical of South and North Memphis. Nobody is going to be attracted in terms of grocery stores, retail, to an area that is sparsely populated and looks and feels dangerous.
So that's just a quick example of African American English. All right, moving on. Very quickly, I believe this is our last one. Yeah, this is our last example. So be strong. So this is an example of West Virginia, rural West Virginia. These are very, very poor people. Poorest people in America, really.
This was a county that has paid its dues to the state, and the state has deserted us.
If you don't have food, you don't know where your next meal's going to come from.
The politicians are going to have to start telling really hard truths. And the people of West Virginia are owed that.
McDowell County, West Virginia isn't a typical stop on the... It's also the poorest county in one of the poorest states in the country.
He's British.
See, I live in that apartment building across the street. I get up in the morning, come over here at 8, make me some coffee, read my paper, and kill time.
Ed Shepherd is 92. His gas station stopped pumping in 1995.
So that my grandfather is 92 years old, and yeah, he used to own a gas station, but it stopped working, being a gas station at the time 25 years ago in the past. But you can hear how he talks.
Up this main street, there wasn't an empty building that didn't have a prosperous business in it. But little by little, they began to close one after the other. And now it's down to a ghost town, a ghost county, really.
When was the last time someone stopped and asked you for some help with
Oh,
their
I
car?
don't know, 4 or 5 days ago, I don't remember exact. Occasionally somebody will pull in the driveway asking for directions, or they're looking for something else in the county. All the good activity is gone, and we're just sitting here now.
So yeah, grandfather's just sitting there. Not a lot to do. So that's he speaking of it. Let's take a look at a female example.
McDowell, she introduces me to people from her childhood. Alma McNeely used to have a good factory job. Now she recycles cans for extra money.
When I was little, there was plenty of jobs. You got timbering and coal mines and people at putting in filling stations, working on cars and stuff. Coal fields gone. They done timbered everything out, so that leaves about everybody gone.
Where do you pick up cans from?
Road, anywheres.
How much is it by pound?
I think it's 45 cents now.
So you can hear how she says road. It's road. That's how she pronounces that word. I'm suddenly reminded, if any of you watched the Hunger Games, District 12, the Katniss's home district, is in West Virginia. It's this kind of place, coal mining, and that's the location. That's where it is. So these are just a few. I say a few. This is some examples of regional accents, national accents. There's a lot more. There's regional accents, there's sub-regional accents, and we talked, the New York accent. There's accents within New York City between the different parts. People with a Brooklyn accent or a Jewish Brooklyn accent speak differently than Jewish people in Manhattan. They do speak differently. So even, a 20-minute subway ride, people speak differently in the same city. So accents, regional accents, sub-regional accents, ethnic groups, some people pronounce things differently. Education as well, where depending on what kind of school you go to, how much schooling you go to, and that all affects how we talk. I'll see if I can find it, but President George W. Bush, he's from Texas, but when he first tried to get elected in the state of Texas, he lost because he spoke too fast and he spoke too smart. And so he learned he had to play dumb. He had to be all folky and happy and be like someone you wanted to have a beer with, not someone you wanted to run your government. And that's what, he got to be president of the United States, so it worked out for him. So this is a brief flyover of different accents of English. Righty then, that is regional accents and national accents as well. So that, of course, as I mentioned just before, that is not nearly 1% of all the different accents of English. It is just a few. Because English is a global language, then, there's lots of different ways of speaking English. But all those examples were native English speakers. Of course, Korean speakers speak English in their own way. So Korean accented English is different from Chinese accented English, which is different from Russian accented English, because we have L1, our first language, plays in to our pronunciation of our second language. It happens. It is perfectly natural for it to happen. So that was what we covered today. Accents and in hearing and just starting to hear the differences in accents. Next week, we're going to go into more the details and the differences between the two major kinds of English, the grammatical, spelling, and word choice, vocabulary differences between British English and American English. That's the two largest division of the big Englishes, the big E's. So for next week, we'll have the differences between American English and British English, but also I'll go overview what will be on the final test. So it should be a banger of an episode. So hopefully you have a good week, and I think I'd like to put a discussion question just to move things along. I hope your semester's going well, and have an excellent week. Thank you and goodbye.